It depends how she feels. You can ask her. Okay, I'm going to share with you a few words before we go into the other part of the service of the funeral. But first is to remember Sam, and he was just 94 years old. It's a lifetime of many things to remember, and it's always hard to encapsulate a person's life in a couple of words, but I wanted to focus on a few points that I think are very important and inspiring, and especially that in Jewish life we always connect everything in life, whether it's a birth, a marriage, and even death. We connect it with the Torah. So it's very, I think, appropriate to reflect on the time. We're just before the day of Purim, and what it calls to memory is a time when the Jews were under a threat of being totally annihilated. In our last generation, it almost came true, but this was another threat that took place in the Persian Empire, where the Persians ruled over the land, 127 countries from India to Ethiopia, and they wanted to literally annihilate every single Jewish person. And the day before Purim, a lot of people are not aware of this, even after Esther became the queen and Mordechai was the viceroy and Haman was deposed of, nevertheless, the king of Persia, which was Ahasuerus, said he could not repeal the decree that Jews were slated to be killed. The only thing, the rule in Persia was that once a decree was issued with the king's seal, it could not be repealed, but that Esther and Mordechai had the ability to issue another decree of anything they wanted. So all they did was that they issued a decree that Jews should be allowed to be armed to defend their lives. And on that day before Purim, there was a very bloody battle. Jews fought against those who would do them harm, and it was we fast on that day because of the threat, and we celebrate the next day because they survived. So I'm recalling this because how do we celebrate Purim? By thinking of each other, by giving gifts to each other, Shalom. And I'm saying this all in a very brief way because I wanted to reflect about Sam's life. Sam was a person who he had a lot of abilities, the second no, but he also gave a lot of his abilities to others in many, many ways. I recall often being in Ashkenazi, his brother-in-law, that was Izzy Handler, Olav Shalom, would call him whenever there was a problem, a mechanical situation, whatever, and I saw him so many times there figuring out what no one else could do and giving of his time just without any limits. And he did this to many people. The way I know that he also helped lots of people. He helped homeless in many ways. He gave them food. He did things for others, but in addition to that, he helped also, besides the shul, the synagogue, he helped many others. And in addition to this, he not only gave of his time and he gave of his money by giving charity, but he also put his life on the line. He went to fight in the War of Independence of Israel, where many people lost their lives at that time, and he went there and literally he was willing to do anything for the sake of his people and for others. And the same thing also later in the Yom Kippur War, he was prepared to do that. But the point is, though, that there are times that we face in the world, even today, very difficult times. And what we learn from this is how to be inspired that sometimes if we don't stand up for each other and try to do the best we can for others, then together we also can have a future. We have a future when we do learn from that, to be up, to stand for each other, as the lesson of Yiddishkeit goes. And the Singer family had a very special commitment to Jewish life. That's he's from Saskatchewan, a Jewish settlement. But at any rate, I wanted to leave some room for Aaron, for his son, to share with us, because words that come from the heart are always most precious. So he'll share with us some thoughts about his father.
Thank you, Rabbi Altein. Thank you, everybody, for coming. My father would appreciate that you're here. My name's Aaron Singer. I'm Sam and Betty's youngest son, and I'm here from Vancouver with my family. My brother Murray and his wife Kanti are living overseas, and they couldn't make it. And my sister and family who live in New York City, my sister tested positive for COVID a few days before my father passed away, and so she wasn't able to travel to Winnipeg at this time, but she's going to try and come for the end of the week to spend some time with my mom and our family. Sam was born. I'm going to repeat some of the things that the rabbi said. But Sam was born in 1928 in Hoffers, Saskatchewan. He was one of 6 children. His brother Joe is still alive. He lives in Toronto. He was predeceased by his 3 sisters, Goldie, Rosie, and Ethel. Esther is here. Esther is her daughter. And by his younger brother Jack. Who was Sam Singer as a person? Well, like the rabbi said, he was very giving and generous, and that kind of spanned from the everyday to traveling halfway around the world when he was 20 years old with some friends to volunteer in the War of Independence. And my dad was a private guy. He didn't like talking about that, but it was something that really was important in his life going forward. It was something that he didn't speak about, but he did keep contact with a lot of the guys that he served in Israel with, volunteers in Canada and the United States and Australia. And in terms of the everyday, my dad had a plumbing and heating business, some of you might have remembered. And so, you know, if you had a pipe burst in the middle of the night or your furnace went off on a cold winter day, he would be the guy that showed up to help you out. Just a personal anecdote. When I was a kid, my dad used to take me on plumbing and heating jobs, and he used to take me around town. And I remember one day he took me to the Orloff scrapyard. Some of you might have remembered that. And there was a guy panhandling outside he said he needed money for food. And my dad said, okay, yeah, no problem. And so we took the guy around the corner, rather than my dad giving him a few dollars. We took the guy around the corner, sat him down at a lunch counter. My dad bought him a sandwich and soup, and we left him sitting there. And when I think about it, you know, my dad was probably thinking, well, if I gave him money, he might have spent it on something else. So I want to make sure he has something to eat. So we took him in for food. And that kind of speaks to the guy that my dad was. In August last year, when the COVID restrictions lifted, my brother and sister and I all traveled to Winnipeg to visit my parents because my dad was not doing so well. And COVID was not good to him because he wasn't really moving around and had deteriorated a lot. But we had a really great visit. He was lucid and alert. We had some good meals with him. We spent time with him and my mom. And we had an excellent visit. And my brother Murray and his wife Kanti stayed another 2 months in September and October. You know, they made lots of good food and had some laughs and looked at photos. And it allowed my dad to stay in his house a bit longer. Shortly after my brother left, my dad fell ill and he ended up in the health science center. And it became apparent that he couldn't go home. Because the level of care he needed was just too great for my mom and home care to provide. And so he moved to the Simpkin Center. And he lived in the Simpkin Center for about 4 months before he passed away. And, you know, he didn't really want to be there, but there wasn't really a lot of choice. And we were just very, very thankful that he had as many years as he did together with my mom at home. I'm just going to read something. My sister really, really wanted to be here, but couldn't. And so she sent me something to read. I'll live until I die. That was just one of the many of my father's mottos. Today we remember Sam for the long life he lived gracefully and charitably. We know that my father was first to lend a helping hand and the last to leave a party, making sure he snapped a photograph of all the guests. But there are some things you may not know about Sam that I would like to share. He had a talented creative side. He made beautiful jewelry with his sister Goldie. He learned how to make stained glass windows late in life. He worked with copper and other metals to make artworks and objects. He was part of a harmonica band. He loved collecting stamps and coins, appreciating their beauty beyond their utility. Sam was a soldier right to the very end. As a young man, he bravely fought in Israel's War of Independence. Many of the photographs he took in 1948 of a nation in transition have been donated to the American Jewish Historical Society in New York City that keeps an archive of Machal volunteers from Canada and countries worldwide. Sam was a historian and an archivist at heart, keeping records of his time in Israel and his upbringing on the plains of Saskatchewan. I'm thankful he took so many pictures of us as kids. It's a nice record to have. He was proud of his children and loved his wife Betty of 61 years. He used to write me letters with his impeccable handwriting, and he had a penchant for buying me pieces of jewelry with hearts on it. If you ask Sam how he was doing, he'd say, "I'm still alive." He was loved and will be forever remembered as a modest man who believed in sharing and kindness. In tribute to Sam, we carry on those principles.
Thank you. Beautiful words and thoughts. We're going to go on with the second phase of the funeral service after we first take care of the needs of the burial, which is a very great mitzvah. It's called Chesed Shel Emet, kindness of truth, because it's the one kindness we do for a person without any anticipation of it being reciprocated, and that's to assist in the burial. So what we're going to do is we're going to each take a few shovelfuls of earth and put it on top of the casket, so we all personally take a part in his burial. If you're able to do it, if you can't, just wait for a few minutes, because we still have to finish with the prayer and the Kaddish that come after that. So please don't leave until we can do that as well. And now I want, on behalf of everyone here, I'd like to ask forgiveness. Mebet Mechila. We ask forgiveness from Sam, from Shmuel, Ben Arin, Ben Fega. If there's anything we did during your lifetime or during the burial or the funeral that is not appropriate, please forgive us. And now, we're going to begin.
I don't know if I just caught him at a bad moment. I mean, I'll try again. Yeah.
We're going to gather a little bit closer. We're going to do the Kaddish soon, and with some prayers. Just hold on. I have a little more over here too. Your mother can wait. She helps you in the business. Not ready to go. We're not going yet. Yeah. El Malei Rachamim Shechein Miraimim Hamsei Menucha Nechena Al Kanfei Hashchina B'Maleis HaKadoshim Uteirim Kizeir Harakiya Mazirim Es Nishmas Shmuel Ben Aaron V'Feger Sholach Leilamei Bavushit Nutzdaka Badas Kodas Nishmasei Began Eden Tehei Menucha Seilachein Balarachamim Yasreu says the Knaf of Leilamim Yitzreu Tzerachayim Es Nishmasei Adnuhunach Alosei Yovashama Mishkovei V'Neimar Amen. Hatzur tamim polei kichol drachav mishpat elam unevei novel tzadik v'yosher hu Hatzur Tamim Bechol Poyal, Miyem Eloi Matifol, Hashalit B'matu V'mal, Mimus Machai Mirishel Vayoal, Hatzur Tamim Bechol Mase, Miyem Eloi Matasa, Hoim V'yoyse Chesed Chrim Lanusasa, Uizchus and Ekad Kisa, Hakshivase, Tzadik Bechol Derocha, Hatzur Tamim, Erechapa, Yimu Malei Rachamim, Chamel Nevachus Nal Ovis, Avan Mulchad and Haslichais, Harachmim, Tzadik Ato Adonai Laham, Misol Hachyois, Asher V'yotcha Pikten Kol Ruchais, Chalila Lecho Zichrenein Ulim Chais, Yunoinech Brachmalin Fukuchais, Yilcho Adonai Rachamim Vaslichais, Adam Ben Shona Yiyah, Yelshon Yichya, Ma Yisno Leik Leho Yiyah, Baruch Dayan HaEmes Memus Machaya, Baruch Hu Ki Ames Dinai, Umishet HaKol, Be'inai, Mishal Yodem Cheshben V'dinai, V'akel Ishmei Hedo Yitenu Yadainu Adonai Ki Tzedek Mishpatecha, Titzak B'dvarecha V'siske B'shavtecha V'en Laharecha Midashvatecha, Tzedek Atot Nevi Yosh Mishpatecha, Dayan Emes, Shefet Tzedek V'emes, Baruch Dayan HaEmes, Shekol Mishpat V'tzedek V'emes, Nefesh Kol Chav Yodecha, Tzedek Molo Yimincha V'yodecha, Rachim Apletas, Sen Yodecha, V'simula Malach, Eref Yodecha, Yolo Eitzav Ravo Aliliyo, V'shenech V'kuchas HaKol Darchi, B'nei Yodom, L'seis Lish Chidrocha V'chid Fri Malol V'lag, Yoshnei Tzuri V'liablosa B'y. Adonai Nosan, V'adnei Lokach, Yishem Adnei Meverach. God has given, and God has taken. May His name be blessed. Urach Mechaperofen V'layashchis, People L'shavat V'liyokoch HaMaseh. Now I'm going to say some Tilim, and then the Kaddish. Just hold on. This is, I don't know if you have one for that. This is from Tilim, after which comes the Kaddish. Lam Nat Seich V'nei Kerech Mizmar. Ad mi korol Yov Nusho Kevim B'Snivim. Du hast sie das Radito, Lachioin Messiah, der Schachar Loch Yisrei, Nifrag Chayo, Nifnei Kati Du Risholein. Rakar Buchon and Klo Me'arei, Vatzot Buchon and Kadisho Lishmei Vasrei. Divi Kodesh Nefek Yafach, Buchonei V'Kerem Mishakei. Chayei V'yom Leichon, Chayei, B'chol, Bet Yisrael. Tiskelei Charba, Davno Mes Minan Kolam B'Yisrael, Va'adolo, Chaim Tovim, Aleinu, Al Kol Yisrael, Nu Amen. Shalom B'Nema, Hu Yaseh Shalom, Aleinu, Al Kol Yisrael, Nu Amen. I'd like to ask everyone to please hold the line so that the immediate family
So, just if you're comfortable, we're going to have a little gathering at the house.